Hello, welcome to Esoterica and Nonsense, a podcast where we discuss myths, legends, folktales, fairy tales, supernatural phenomenon, and religions from around the world. I am your host, Annabelle. I'm just a random guy who loves magic and loves folktales and loves talking about the supernatural. So here we are on a beautiful Wednesday. It's a rainy day here. It's so nice and cozy. We love rain. And I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to talk about the magic of the deer. We are balls deep in the story of what the rose did to the cypress. A story that involves a little bit of deer, but is mostly a very long, drawn-out story of a prince trying to win the favor of a princess. There's so much to recap, so if you haven't listened to part 2 of the deer episode, I highly recommend you do that. You're going to be lost in this story, but I'm going to do my best to summarize. In a nutshell, in a kingdom far away, there was a king with 3 sons. The eldest of the son went out hunting with so many provisions that the hunting expedition was a little bit crazy. He was over-prepared, if you know what I mean. And so this prince found this gorgeous deer. He wanted to hunt it, and alas, he couldn't. And he followed this deer so far into the forest and eventually into the desert that his own horse dropped dead of thirst. And there, deep in the desert, he met a man who was dressed royally but was alone in the desert. And so this prince asked this man, "What are you doing here, dude? Explain to me what's happening." So this man tells him this long tale that he once had 7 sons, which we all know is the dream of the patriarchy, for every man to have 7 sons. And each of his sons had fallen in love with a princess. And this princess was incredibly beautiful with a face like the moon, but she would only marry a man who answered a riddle that she gave. And all of her sons had fallen in love with her, and all of them could not answer this riddle. So all 7 of his sons had been beheaded. So, of course, as we can assume, this young prince, who is not very smart, without seeing this princess, says, "Love her. I'm in love." Which is pretty iconic. We love that. Oh, wait, hold on. We need to silence my phone because knowing me, I'm just going to get so distracted. I'm like a squirrel. Okay, so now we have our prince. He's obsessed with his princess. He can't stop thinking about her. So what does he do? He goes to the princess. They tell him the riddle, and he can't answer it, so they behead him. His second brother then hears about this story. He falls in love with the princess. He goes to this kingdom. He can't answer the riddle, and so they behead him. So the third son, who is named Almas, wants revenge. He's sick of this shit. He's sick of this narrative. And his father, the king, is distraught, so he wants revenge. So he ventures to this faraway kingdom, and he starts observing the town. He stays with an older couple who is far over 100, and he never tells them that he's looking for the answer to this riddle, which is it's bewildering because surely the elders know, but whatever. He decides to spy on the princess. He sneaks into the castle grounds, and he's hiding naked by the river, and eventually the maidens, the servants of the princess, see him in the reflection of the water, hiding naked. So they freak out, and they fetch him from the garden But of course, he's a prince, so he's super hot. And all the girls are like, oh my God, he's beautiful. Oh my God, I'm in love with him. And the princess herself is like, yeah, this guy's super hot. But our boy, the Prince Almas, already knows the score. He keeps it on the low. He pretends to be super crazy. He pretends to be fully insane. So they're not threatened by him, but they let him stay in the castle. So the servant girl who had first found him falls in love with him because he's so hot. So she keeps like trying to marry him, but he just keeps pretending to be crazy. And eventually he tells her that he would like to seek revenge for his brothers and that he's trying to figure out the answer of this riddle. She tells him that the riddle came from a community of black folks that are also giants, and that he needs to go to the most dangerous part of the world to talk to these giants to get the answer of the riddle. But this servant girl only tells him this if he agrees to marry her. And he's like, yeah, sure. So he like takes this long journey. He's trying to find these giants that can answer his riddle. On the way, everyone's telling him, you're making a huge mistake, it's super dangerous, blah, blah, blah. He eventually finds this incredible garden. It's gorgeous. There is a giant in there, and he is black. And he avoids him and ends up finding a princess who is beautiful. This princess falls in love with him. She's like, baby, I will feed you. I will clothe you. You can be a king of this garden. Please, just don't leave me. Just stay. And of course, he's like, no, I'm avenging my brothers. But I'll marry you when I come back if you help me. And she just can't take it. She doesn't want to see him die. So she turns him into a deer so she can keep him and behold him as a deer. Then he keeps trying to escape. The garden has some weird enchantment. He keeps trying to hop the wall, but when he hops the wall, he finds himself on the same side. It's super, super trippy. And eventually he jumps the wall and is in a garden that's very similar but different. And there is also a princess who's even more beautiful than the first princess who turned him into a deer. And she is like, wow, this deer is so beautiful. I just want to look at it. I just want to stare at it. It's incredible. But then she realizes that something is off, and she assumes this deer is a man. So she turns him back into a man, and she realizes that her sister is the one who had bewitched him and turned him into a deer. So alas, here we are again. Prince Almas tells her that he is trying to avenge his two brothers. She tells him that his quest is not safe, but she will help him if he promises to marry her. And he's like, yeah, sure. So just to keep score, this is 3 women now that he has promised to marry. Okay, just saying. Okay, that's our recap. I did go a little bit further, but I'm just gonna like pick up the story from here just to like keep everything in our brains fresh. And actually, before I start reading, first of all, I want to say happy Libra season. Sometimes I don't always like Libra season, but I'm really trying to be open-minded to it. I'm in Aries, so sometimes Libra, it kind of like gets on my nerves. It's the cardinal like air sign, which is all about the mind. I try not to overthink things. I find Libra season, I'm often overthinking. So my intention for Libra season, instead of overthinking everything, I want to use my mind to be creative about how I can be productive and how I can be more creative. I'm going to use my mind as a creative tool. That's my dream and that's my intention. Also, right now, I am burning some coco canela incense. It smells incredible. I'm also burning a candle called Abre Caminos, open roads, open doorways, I think in English we would more likely say, but Abre Caminos. And I'm actually going to read, I promise it's short, but I'm going to read this like little incantation here on this candle. And it's in Spanish, but that's okay because it's more beautiful in Spanish. So even if you don't speak Spanish, just let these incantations and decrees wash over you. Abro mis caminos en el amor aquí y ahora. Abro mis caminos en el dinero aquí y ahora. Abro mis caminos en el trabajo aquí y ahora. Abro mis caminos en la paz aquí y ahora. Abro mis caminos en la prosperidad aquí y ahora. Abro mis caminos en la salud aquí y ahora. Abro mis caminos en la suerte aquí y ahora. Abro mis caminos en la tranquilidad aquí y ahora. Abro todos mis caminos aquí y ahora. Isn't that so nice? I think so. I think it's very nice. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive deep into part 2 of what the rose did to the cypress. And that's really what this story is about. What did the rose do to the cypress? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Vamos a ver. Let's see. Okay. So we are at the part where the Prince Almas insists that he needs to go and figure out this riddle. So he needs to go deeper into this dark and scary road to find these giants. And again, I just want to preface that this story is coated and layered with elements of racism. And so it seems, from what I'm assuming, their descriptions of Black folks were perhaps conflated over time with exaggerations. And of course, this is like a story, but these descriptions of them being the size of buildings and whatnot, like the energy I'm getting is just blatant colorism and racism, but perhaps these stories were always told with them being giants. Who's to say? Not I. Okay, so we're at the point now where the princess consents and she decides to help our hero, Prince Almas. So she takes out and gives him a bow and a quiver of arrows. She gives him a sword and a dagger out of the box. And the prince let fall a bismillah and girt to them all. Then the princess Jamila, of her beautiful moon face, produced 2 saddlebags of ruby red silk, one filled with a roasted fowl and little cakes, and the other with stones of prize. Next she gave him a horse as swift as the breeze of the morning, and she said, "Accept all of these things from me. Ride till you come to a rising ground, at no great distance from here, where there lies a freshwater spring. It is called the Place of Gifts, and you must stay there one night. There you will see many wild beasts, lions, tigers, leopards, apes, and so on. Before you get there, you must capture some game. On the long road beyond there dwells a lion king. Allah, if other beasts do not fear him, they would ravage the whole country and let no one pass. The lion is a red transgressor, so when he comes, rise and do him reverence. Take a cloth and rub the dust and earth from his face. Then set the game you have taken before him, well cleansed, and lay the hands of respect on your breast. When he wishes to eat, take your knife and cut pieces of the meat and set them before him with a bow. In this way, you will enfold that Lion King and you are in perfect friendship. And he will be most useful to you, and you will be safe from molestation by the giants. When you go on from the place of gifts, be sure you do not take the right-hand road. Take the left, for the other leads to the castle of giants, which is known as the place of clashing swords, and where there are 40 giant captains, each over 3,000 or 4,000. Their chief is known as Taramtak. Further on from this, there is a home of the Simurge. Having stored these things in the prince's memory, she said, "You will see everything happen just as I have said." Then she escorted him a little way. They parted, and she went home to mourn his absence. Prince Almas, relying on the causer of causes, rode on to the place of gifts and dismounted at the platform. Everything happened just as the Princess Jamila had foretold. When 1 or 2 watches of the night had passed, he saw that the open ground around him was full of stately and splendid animals as he had never seen before. By and by, they made way for a wonderfully big lion, which was 80 yards from nose to tail tip, and it was a magnificent creature. The prince advanced and saluted it. It proudly dropped its head and forelocks and paced to the platform. 70 or 80 others were with it, and now encircled at a little distance. It laid its right paw over its left, and the prince took the kerchief that Princess Jamila had given him for the purpose, and rubbed the dust and earth from the lion's face. Then he brought forward the game that he had prepared, and crossing his hands respectfully on his breast, stood waiting before the lion. When it wished for food, he cut off pieces of the meat and put them in its mouth. The serving lions also came near, and the prince would have stayed his hand, but the king lion signed to him to feed them as well. This he did, laying the meat on the platform. Then the king lion beckoned the prince to come near, and he said, "Sleep at ease, my guards will watch you." So, surrounded by the lion guard, Prince Almas slept till dawn. When the king lion said goodbye and gave him a few of his own hairs, he instructed him, "When you are in any difficulty, burn one of these hairs, and I will be there." And then it went off into the jungle. Prince Almas immediately started. He rode till he came to the parting of ways. The peppers. The peppers are always listening. Write that down. The peppers are always listening. Okay. Prince Almas immediately started on his journey. He rode till he came to the parting of ways. He remembered quite well that the right-hand path was short and dangerous, but he bethought himself, too, that whatever was written on his forehead would happen, and took the forbidden road. Oh my God. Come on, bro. Listen to what your princess told you. I literally can't relate to stuff like this. Like, if somebody knows more than me and gives me explicit instructions, and then I'm on the road and things are happening exactly as they say, I'm gonna listen to their advice. I genuinely can't relate to Prince Almas right now at all. Okay, so he takes the forbidden road. By and by, he saw a castle and knew from what the princess had told him that this was the place of clashing swords. He would have liked to go back by the way he had come, but courage forbade him, and he said, "What has been preordained from eternity will happen to me," and he went on towards the castle. He was thinking of tying his horse to a tree which grew near the gate, when a giant came out and spied him. "Ha!" said the giant to himself. "This is good. Taramtak has not eaten man-meat for a long time and is craving for some. I will take this creature to him." He took hold of the prince's reins and he said, "Dismount, man-child." Oh my God, that is such a read. Can you imagine a man calling another man man-child? I live for that.
"Dismount, man-child, come to my master. He has wanted to eat man meat this long, long time."
"What nonsense are you saying?" said the Prince Almas. When the giant understood that he was being disrespected, he cried, "Come along. I will put you in such a state that the birds of the air will weep for you." Then the prince drew from his bag the scorpion of Solomon and struck the giant on the leathern belt and shore him through so that the sword came out on the other side. Okay, so he killed the fuck out of him. The giant stood upright for a little while, muttered some words, put his hand to seize the prince, and then quickly fell in 2 pieces and surrendered his life. Okay, so he was clean sliced in half. Sick. Honestly, that's pretty lit. This is pretty lit. I would watch this as an action film. Okay, could you imagine, I'm sorry, pause. Could you imagine this story being made as like a 1980s fantasy action picture? Ugh, that's my dream. I would love, write this down. If nobody does it, I'll do it. I would love to do like stories from the 1001 Nights, but like set in the accurate time period, so set like 1,000, 2,000 years ago, but meanwhile have it done in like an 80s fantasy style. That's my dream. That's my dream. It's not that hard, people. Everyone's doing remakes right now and they're so bad. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but just, I have so, whatever. Okay, here we are. So now the prince, having slain the first giant, looks to the water close by him, the water close at hand. The prince made an ablution out loud, and he said, "O my heart, a wonderful task lies upon you." And at this, a second giant came out near the fort. And seeing what had been done, he went back and told his master. Others wished to be doubled and went out. And of every single one, the scorpion of Solomon made 2. Then Taramtak sent for a giant named Chilmak, who in the day of the battle was worth 300 men, and said to him, "I shall thank you to fetch me that man." So the king of the giants is ready for man meat, and he's sending Chilmak, strong as 300 men. Chilmak went out of the fort, tall as a tower, and bearing a shield of 8 millstones. As he walked, he shouted, "Ho, blunderhead!" Blunderhead. "By what right do you come to our country and kill our people? Come, make 2 of me." As the prince was despicable in his eyes, he tossed aside his club and rushed to grip him with his hands. Pause. I love how poetic this is, that they're describing the way he's slicing people in half, that he's making 2 of them. That's beautiful poetry, while talking about extreme violence. Okay, as the prince was despicable in his eyes, Chilmak tossed aside his club and rushed to grip him with his bare hands. He caught him by the collar, tucked him under his arm, and set off with him to the tower of Taramtak, the king of giants. But the prince drew the dagger of Timus and thrust it upwards towards the giant's armpit for its full length. This made Chilmak drop him and try to pick up his club. But when he stooped, the mighty sword shore him through at the waist. Ah, brutal. This is brutal, dude. When the news of his champion's death reached the king Taramtak, he put himself at the head of an army of his giants and led them forth.
Many fell before the magic sword, and the prince labored on in spite of weakness and fatigue till he was almost worn out. In a moment of respite from attack, he struck his fire steel and burned a hair of the king lion. Hello! Yeah, dude, we should have done this like a minute ago. I would have done that right away. And he had just succeeded in this when the giants charged again and all but took him prisoner. Suddenly, from behind the distant veil of the desert, appeared an army of lions led by their king. "What brings these scourges of heaven here?" cried the giants. They came roaring up and put fresh life into the prince. He fought on, and when he struck on a belt, the wearer fell in two. And when on a head, he cleft to the waist. Then the 10,000 mighty lions joined the fray and tore in pieces man and horse. I'm sorry. This is so beautifully written. I've never read an epic poem about slicing people in half. I've never heard such eloquent language talk about dismembering human beings. This is what's the word? Bittersweet, very bittersweet, because it's so beautiful and yet so dark, and I do not condone violence. But in stories, I find it entertaining. It's also very human. You know, here I'm going to go on a short tangent, but I think a lot about human history and how violence has been such a part of human history for the last, 10,000 years. And at a certain point, when you think about epigenetic memory, this violence lives on in our DNA. And I feel like it wants to come to the surface. And that's why I think so many people, without realizing it, end up becoming violent, sometimes when they're drunk or sometimes when they just lose control. But I think that's also why in our culture it's so popular to watch a war film or an action movie or even sports, right? Sports are just a tame version of the gladiator world, but really it's displaying violence as a form of entertainment. But I think it's also scratching an itch of remembering war, because of course many of us haven't been to war in this life, but our ancestors have. In our past lives we possibly have, and there's this weird, I think, therapeutic quality of engaging in things like sports and violence, even if it's just on a subconscious level. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's just a Pepper's theory, my theory. Okay. So, when the king of giants, Taramtak, was left alone, he would have retired into his fort, but the prince shouted, "Whither away, accursed one? Are you fleeing before me?" At these defiant words, the chief shouted back, "Welcome, man-child. Come here, and I will soften you to wax beneath my club." Then he hurled his club at the prince's head, but it fell harmless because the prince had quickly spurred his horse forward. The chief, believing he had hit him, was looking down for him when all at once he came up behind and cleft him to the waist and sent him straight to hell. Okay. The king lion greatly praised the dashing courage of Prince Almas. They went together into the castle of the clashing swords and found it adorned and fitted in princely fashion. In it was a daughter of Taramtak. Still a child, she sent a message to Prince Almas saying, "O king of the world, choose me as your slave to be your handmaid. Keep me with you where you go, and she will go." That's dark. That's really dark. And again, I just want to mention that the giants are black folks. So the fact, this is just a lot. This is a lot. I'm just sensing a lot of colorism in the word choices here. But alas, Prince Almas sent for the princess, and she kissed his feet and received the Musulman faith at his hands. He told her he was going on a long journey on important business, and that when he came back, he would take her and her possessions to his own country. But for the present, she must stay in the castle. Then he made over the fort and all that was in it to care for the lion, saying, "Guard them, brother, let no one lay a hand on them." He said goodbye, chose a fresh horse from the chief's stable, and once again took the road. After traveling many stages for many days, he reached a plain of marvelous beauty and refreshment. It was carpeted with flowers. Hi, peppers. Roses, tulips, and clover. It had lovely lawns, and amongst them running water. This choicest place of earth filled him with wonder. There was a tree such as he had never seen before. Its branches were alike, but it bore flowers and fruit of 1,000 kinds. Near it, a reservoir had been fashioned of 4 sorts of stone: touchstone, pure stone, marble, and lodestone. In and out of it flowered water like attar. The prince felt sure that this must be the place of the Simurgh. He dismounted and turned his horse loose to graze, ate some of the food that the Princess Jamila had given him, and drank of the stream and lay down. I keep reading this word, Simurgh, and I don't even know what it means. Oh, okay. I'm so glad I Googled this. Sometimes I do this thing where I just pretend like I know words because I assume everyone else knows them, and I don't know why I do that. I feel like it's like a habit from middle school because I didn't know how to read very well, so I just pretended. But here I am. A Simurgh, everyone, is a benevolent bird in Persian mythology. It's kind of almost like a griffin and like a phoenix situation. It can be found in many periods of Iranian art and literature. Let's see. I want more depictions. Okay, so the Simurgh is a winged creature in the shape of a bird. It's gigantic enough to carry off an elephant or whale. It appears in similar appearance as a peacock, with the head of a dog and the claws of a lion. Sometimes, however, with the face of a human. The Simurgh is inherently benevolent. Being part mammal, they suckle their youth. The Simurgh has an enmity towards snakes, and its natural habitat is a place with plenty of water. Its feathers are said to be the color of copper in many tales, and thought it was originally described as a dog bird. Later it was shown either with the head of a man or a dog. Yeah, so this is like very griffin situation. Most likely the Simurgh was first, and then the griffin probably came later because, the Europeans would hear stories from the East and adapt them into their own. Interestingly, the word Simurgh comes from the root CSI, meaning 30. And it's thought that, so basically merge means like eagle bird. So it's directly Simurgh means like a 30 bird, a 30 eagle. And it's thought that perhaps it was because it was either as large as 30 birds or was the color of 30 birds because of its intricate colors. Iranian legends consider the Simurgh to be so old that it had seen the destruction of the world 3 times over. The Simurgh learned so much by living so long that it is thought to possess the knowledge of all ages. In one legend, the Simurgh was said to have lived for 1,700 years before plunging itself into flames. The Simurgh was considered to purify the land and waters and hence bestow fertility. The creature represented the union between earth and sky, serving as a mediator and messenger between the two. Oh, cool. This is reminding me a lot of like these primordial stories in a lot of cultures where the snakes had once ruled the earth and then were defeated by birds. And I feel like that's why like almost every country uses like a bird with their military, because it's like drawing on this ancient story of birds defeating snakes. Okay, I'm so glad I looked that up. I'm so sorry that I pretended to know what that meant. We really should have talked about this in last episode, but here we are. So, finally, our Prince Almas is in this gorgeous, gorgeous garden, and he assumes that this is the place where the Simurgh lives. And so here he is. He eats some of his food, he drinks from the stream, and he lays down to sleep. Prince Almas was still dozing when he was aroused by the neighing and pawing of his horse. When he could see clearly, he made out a mountain-like dragon whose heavy breast crushed the stones beneath it into putty. He remembered the 1,000 names of God and took the bow of Salih from its case. Oh, the bow. It's so frustrating sometimes that bow and bow are spelled the same because it's all about context. It's all about context. Okay. He took the bow of Salih from its case and 3 arrows from its quiver. He bound the dagger of Timus firmly to his waist and hung the scorpion of Solomon round his neck. Then he set an arrow on the string and released it with such force that it went into the monster's right eye up to the notch. What? Why are we shooting the Simurgh? Oh my God. I'm getting fed up with Prince Almas. I've had it up to here. The dragon writhed in pain on itself and belched forth an evil vapor and beat the ground with its head till the earth quaked. I just don't buy it. I'm so sick of this narrative. Just because something can kill you does not make it evil. And we literally just read that Simurghs are known to be benevolent. So this is bullshit. I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of this. You should be asking for its help and telling him that he's really pretty. You should have said, hey, you're a really pretty dragon. Are you willing to be my friend? You should do the same thing you should have done for the lion. Here, I got you some food. I picked some flowers for you. You're super powerful. Can I learn magic from you? Like, that's how it should have been done, Prince Almas. Take notes. Take notes. This is driving me crazy. Okay, so then, of course, the Prince Almas takes a second arrow and he shoots it into the throat of the Simurgh. It drew in its breath and would have sucked the prince into its mouth. But when he was within striking distance, he drew his sword and, having committed himself to God, struck a mighty blow which cut the creature's neck down to the gullet. Don't bring God into this, bro. Do not use God to justify this murder. I'm just not down. The foul vapor of the beast and horror at its strangeness now overcame the prince, and he fainted. When he came to himself, he found that he was drenched in the gore of the dead monster. He rose and thanked God for his deliverance. I'm sick of you, dude. This is so lame. This better be worth it. He better figure out what the rose did to the Cyprus, because at this point there's been so many casualties, and to kill a sacred, primordial, benevolent beast, like, I'm just so tired of this. Wrap it up. Okay. The nest of the Simurgh was in the wonderful tree above him, and in it were young birds. Oh my God, you better not kill them. The parents were away searching for food. They always told the children before they left them not to put their heads out of the nest. But today, at the noise of the fight below, they looked down and saw the whole affair. By the time the dragon had been killed, they were very hungry and set up a clamor for food. This is stressing me out, you guys. The prince therefore cut up the dragon and fed them with it, bit by bit, till they had eaten it whole. Oh my God. How dare you? Then he washed himself and lay down to rest. And he was still asleep when the Simurgh came home. As a rule, the young birds raised a clamor of welcome when their parents came home. But at this day, they were so full of dragon meat that they had no choice. They had gone to sleep. Oh my gosh. Okay, silly me. I'm still mad that he killed the dragon. But the dragon and the Simurgh are distinct different creatures. I thought they were describing the Simurgh as a dragon. Silly, silly me. Okay. The prince has killed a dragon while the Simurgh couple was out hunting. I'm still mad. I'm still mad that he killed the dragon. I'm just saying I'm still mad. Okay. As the adult Simurghs flew nearer, the old birds saw the prince lying under their tree and no sign of life in the nest. They thought that the misfortune which for so many earlier years had befallen them had again happened, and that their nestlings had disappeared. They had never been able to find out the murderer, and now suspected that the prince had murdered their young year after year. They had never been able to find the murderer. Oh, I just read that. Okay. He has eaten our children and sleeps after it. He must die, said the father bird, and flew back to the hills and clawed up a huge stone, which he meant to let fall on the prince's head. Karmically, I'm not mad at this. He didn't kill their kids, but he just killed a beautiful dragon. So karmically, I feel like this is fair. But his mate, the Simurgh's mate, said to him, "Let us look into the nest first, for to kill an innocent person would condemn us to the day of resurrection." They flew nearer, and presently the young birds woke and cried, "Mother, what have you brought for us?" They told the whole story of the fight and how they were alive only by the favor of the young man under the tree, and of his cutting up of the dragon and of their eating it. The mother bird then remarked, "Truly, father, you are about to do a strange thing, and a terrible sin has been averted from you." Then the Simurgh flew off to a distance with a great stone and dropped it. It sank down to the very middle of the earth. Coming back, the Simurgh saw that a little sunshine fell upon the prince through the leaves, and it spread its wings and shaded him till he woke. When he got up, he salaamed to it, and the Simurgh returned his greeting with joy and gratitude, and caressed him and said, "O youth, tell me true, who are you and where are you going? And how did you cross that pitless desert where never yet foot of man had trod?" The prince told his story from beginning to end, and finished by saying, "Now it is my heart's wish that you should help me get to the walk of the Caucasus. Perhaps by your favor I shall accomplish my task and avenge my brothers." In reply, the Simurgh first blessed the deliverance of his children, and then went on, "What you have done, no child of man has ever done before. You assuredly have claim on all my help for every year till now that the dragon has come here and has destroyed my nestlings. I have never been able to find who is the murderer and who to avenge. By God's grace, you have removed my children's powerful foe. I regard you as a child of my own. Stay with me. I will give you everything you desire, and I will establish a city here for you. and I will furnish it with every requisite. I will give you the land of the Caucasus, and I will make its princes subject to you. Give up the journey to walk. It is full of risk, and the jinns there will clearly kill you. But nothing could move the prince, and seeing this, the Simurgh went on. Well, so be it. When you wish to set forth, you must go into the plain and take 7 heads of deer, and you must make watertight bags of their hides and keep their flesh in 7 portions. 7 seas lie on our way. I will carry you over them. But if I have not food and drink, we shall fall into the sea and be drowned. When I ask for it, you must put food and water into my mouth, so we shall make the journey safely. The prince did as he was told. Then they took flight. They crossed the 7 seas, and at each one the prince fed the Simurgh. When they alighted on the shore of the last sea, it said, "O my son, there lies your road. Follow it to the city. Take thee 3 feathers of mine, and if you are in a difficulty, burn one, and I will be with you in a twinkling of an eye." The prince walked on in solitude till he reached the city. He went in and wandered about through all quarters and through bazaars and lanes and squares, in the least knowing from whom he could ask information about the riddle of the princess Mir Afruz. He spent 7 days thinking it over in silence. From the first day, see, this is where I'm annoyed. All you need to do is go and talk to the oldest person in town. Even if they don't know the answer, they'll point you in the right direction. Dude, you could have just done this in the first city. Wouldn't it be crazy if, like, all along the old couple that he stayed with in that first city had all the answers? I'm going to put my money on it. Let's just see what happens. Okay, from the first day of his coming, he had made friends with a young clothing merchant, and a great liking had sprung up between them. One day he said abruptly to his companion, "Oh, dear friend, I wish you would tell me what the rose did to the cypress, and what the sense of the riddle is." The merchant started and exclaimed, "If there were no brotherly affection between us, I would cut off your head for asking me this." "If you meant to kill me," retorted the prince, "you would still have first to tell me what I want to know." When the merchant saw that the prince was in deadly earnest, he said, "If you wish to hear the truth of the matter, you must wait upon our king. There is no other way. No one else will tell you. I have a well-wisher at the court named Farouk Fal, and will introduce you to him." "That would be excellent," cried the prince. A meeting was arranged between Farouk Fal and Prince Almas, and then the merchant took him to the king's presence and introduced him as a stranger and traveler who had come from afar to sit in the shadow of the king Sinaubar. Now the Simurgh had given the prince a diamond weighing 30 miscals. I don't know what a miscal is. Let's quickly Google it. Miscal. Okay, a miscal is about 4.25 grams. So 4.25 times, it was 30, right? I could have done this in my head, actually. I just want to be really specific. About 127 grams. That's really not that much. 100 grams is, I don't know, like a quarter of a pound, give or take. So it's really not too much, but it's a diamond, so I get it. A diamond weighing a quarter of a pound, it's a lot of money.
So the Simurgh was very kind, had given him this giant diamond, and he ordered this to the king. The king immediately recognized the diamond's value and asked the prince where he had obtained it. I, your slave, once had riches and state and power. There are many such stones in my country. On my way here, I was plundered at the castle of clashing swords, and I saved this one thing only, hidden in my bathing cloth. In return for the diamond, the king Sinaubar showered gifts of much greater value, for he remembered that this was the last possession of the prince. He showed the utmost kindness and hospitality. He gave his wazir orders to install the prince in the royal guest house. He took much pleasure in his visitors' society. They were together every day and spent the time most pleasantly. Several times the king said, "Ask me for something that I may give it to you." One day he so pressed to know what would pleasure the prince, and the prince finally said, "I have only one wish, and that I will name to you in private." The king at once commanded everyone to withdraw, and the Prince Almas said, "The desire of my life is to know what the rose did to the cypress, and what meaning there is in these words." The king was astounded. In God's name, if anyone else had said that to me, I should have cut off his head instantly. The prince heard this in silence, and presently so beguiled the king with pleasant talk that to kill him was impossible. This is drama. Time flew by. The king again and again begged the prince to ask him of another gift, and always received the same reply. "I wish for your majesty's welfare. What more can I desire?" One night there was a banquet, and the cupbearers carried round gold and silver cups of sparkling wine, and singers sang with the sweetest voices, contented for the prize. The prince drank from the king's own cup, and when his head was hot with wine, he took a lute from one of the musicians and placed himself on the carpet border and sang till he witched away the sense of all who listened. Applause and compliments rang from every side of the court. The king filled his cup and called the prince and gave it to him, and he said, "Name your wish, and it is yours." The prince drained off the wine and answered, "O king of the world, learn and know that I have only one aim in life, and that is to know what the rose did to the cypress." "Never yet," replied the king, "has any man come out from that question alive. If this is your only wish, so be it, I will tell you. But I will do this on one condition only, namely, that when you have heard, you will submit yourself to death." To this the prince agreed, and he said, "I set my foot firmly on this compact." The king then gave order to an attendant. A costly carpet overlaid with European velvet was placed underneath him, and a dog was led in by a gold and jeweled chain and set upon the splendid stuffs. A band of fair girls came in and stood round in waiting. Then, with ill words, 12 slaves dragged in a lovely woman, fettered on hands and feet, and meanly dressed, and they set her down on the bare floor. She was extraordinarily beautiful, and shamed the glorious sun. The king ordered 100 stripes to be laid on her tender body. She sighed a long sigh. Food was called for, and the tablecloths were spread. Delicate meats were set before the dog, and the water given it in a royal cup of Chinese crystal.
When the dog had eaten its fill, its leavings were placed before the lovely woman, and she was made to eat them. She wept, and her tears were pearls. She smiled, and her lips shed roses. Pearls and flowers were gathered up and taken into the treasury. Stop! Are you kidding me? This woman is crying pearls and smiling roses. This is incredible. Yeah, the peppers are like, fuck yeah, fuck yeah. Now, said the king, you have seen these things and your purpose is fulfilled. Truly, said the prince, I have seen things which I have not understood. What do they mean? And what is the story of them? Tell me and kill me. Then, said the king, the woman you see there in chains is my wife. She is called Gul, the rose, and I am Cinnabar, the cypress. One day I was hunting and became very thirsty. After such great search, I discovered a well in a place so secret that neither bird nor beast nor man could find it without labor. I was alone. I took my turban for a rope and my cup for a bucket. There was a good deal of water, but when I let down my rope, something caught it, and I could not in any way draw it back. I shouted down into the well, O servant of God, whoever you are, why do you deal unfairly with me? I am dying of thirst. Let it go, in God's name. A cry came up in answer. O servant of God, we have been in the well a long time. In God's name, get us out. After trying 1,000 schemes, I drew up 2 blind women. They said they were Peris, and that their king had blinded them in his anger and left them in the well alone. Now, they said, if you will get us the cure for our blindness, we will devote ourselves to your service and do whatever you wish. What is the cure for your blindness? Said the king. Not far from this place, they said, a cow comes up from the great sea to graze. A little of her dung would cure our sight. We should be eternally your debtors. Do not let the cow see you, or she will assuredly kill you. With renewed strength and spirit, I went to the shore. There I watched the cow come up from the sea, graze, and go back. Then I came out of my hiding, took a little of her dung, and conveyed it to the Peris. They rubbed it on their eyes, and by divine they saw once again. Peppers! They're loving the story about the cow poop. I know, it's pretty good, huh? Do you guys need to take a little nap? Why don't you guys relax and I'll finish the story? Okay. The blind women could now see. They thanked heaven and me, and then considered what they could do to show their gratitude to me. Our Peri king, they said, has a daughter whom he keeps under his own eye and thinks the most lovely girl on earth. In good sooth, she has not her equal. Now we will get you into her house, and you must win her heart. And if she has an inclination for another, you must drive it out and win her for yourself. Her mother loves her so dearly that she has no ease but in her presence, and she will give her to no one in marriage. Teach her to love you so that she cannot exist without you. But if the matter becomes known to her mother, she will have you burned in the fire. Then you must beg, as a last favor, that your body may be anointed with oil, so that you may burn the more quickly and be spared torture. If the Peri king allows this favor, you two will manage to be your anointers, and we will put an oil on you, such that if you are 1,000 years in the fire, not a trace of burning would remain. In the end, the 2 Peris took me to the girl's house. I saw her sleeping daintily. She was most lovely, and I was so amazed at the perfection of her beauty that I stood with senses lost. and did not know if she were real or a dream. When at last I saw that she was a real girl, I returned thanks that I, the runner, had come to my goal, and that I, the seeker, had found my treasure. When the Peri opened her eyes, she asked in affright, "Who are you? Have you come to steal? How did you get here? Be quick, save yourself from this whirlpool of destruction, for the demons and the Peris who guard me will wake and seize you." I think a Peri is like a Peri is a supernatural entity originating from Persian folk tales, and they are known to shapeshift. They are sometimes considered evil and sometimes not, and they are morally complex beings and known to be immensely beautiful. Okay, so to this the king says, "But love's arrow had struck me deep, and the girl too looked kindly on me. I could not go away. For some months I remained hidden in her house. We did not dare to let her mother know of our love. Sometimes the girl was very sad and fearful lest her mother should come to know. One day her father said to her, 'Sweetheart, for some time I have noticed that your beauty is not what it was. How is this? Has sickness touched you? Tell me that I may seek a cure.' Alas, there was now no way of concealing the mingled delight and anguish of our love. From secret it became known. I was put in prison, and the world grew dark to my rose, bereft of her lover. The Peri King ordered me to be burnt, and he said, 'Why have you, a man, done this perfidious thing in my house?' His demons and Peris collected amber wood and made a pile, and would have set me on it, when I remembered the word of life which the two Peris I had rescued had breathed into my ear, and I asked that my body might be rubbed with oil to release me sooner from torture. This was allowed, and these two contrived to be anointers. I was put into the fire, and it was kept for 7 days and nights. By the will of the great king, it left no trace upon me. At the end of a week, the Peri King ordered the ashes to be cast upon the dust heap, and I was found alive and unharmed." Peris who had seen Gul, or the Rose Princess, consumed by her love for me now, interceded with the king and said, "It is clear that your daughter's fortunes are bound up with his, for the fire has not hurt him. It is best to give him the girl, for they love one another. He is King Wak of Kaf, and you will find none better." To this the king agreed and made formal marriage between Gul and me. You now know the price I paid for this faithless creature. O prince, remember our compact. "I remember," said the prince, "but tell me what brought Queen Gul to her present pass." "One night," continued King Sinaubad, "I was aroused by feeling Gul's hands and feet, deadly cold against my body. I asked her where she had been to get so cold, and she said she had to go out. Next morning, when I went to my stable, I saw 2 of my horses, Windfoot and Tiger, were thin and worn. I reprimanded the groom and beat him. He asked where his fault lay, and said that every night my wife took one or the other of these horses and rode away, and came back only just before dawn. A flame kindled in my heart, and I asked myself where she could go and what she could do. I told the groom to be silent, and when next Gul took a horse from the stable to saddle, another quickly, and to bring it to me. That day I did not hunt, but stayed home in order to follow the matter up. I lay down as usual at night and pretended to fall asleep. When I seemed safely off, Gul got up and went to the stable as her custom was. That night
it was Tiger's turn. She rode off on him, and I took Windfoot and followed. With me went that dog, you see, a faithful friend who never left me. When I came to the foot of those hills, which lie outside the city, I saw my queen, Gull, dismount and go towards a house which some giants had built there. And again, just to be clear, giants, they're referring to black folks. So I'm assuming there's an affair happening. Over against the door was a high seat, and on it lay a giant before whom she salaamed. He got up and beat her till she was marked with wheals, but she uttered no complaint. I was dumbfounded, for once I had struck her with a rose stalk, and she had complained and fretted for 3 days. Then the giant said to her, "How now, ugly one?" What? I guess he said to her, "How now, ugly one and shaven head? Why are you so late, and why are you not wearing wedding garments?" She answered him, "That person did not go to sleep quickly, and he stayed at home all day, so that I was not able to adorn myself. I came as soon as I could." In a little while he called her to sit beside him. But this was more than I could bear. I lost control of myself and rushed upon him. He clutched my collar, and we grappled in a death struggle. Suddenly she came behind me and caught my feet and threw me. While he held me on the ground, she drew out my own knife and gave it to him. I should have been killed, but for the faithful dog who seized his throat and pulled him down and pinned him to the ground. Then I got up and dispatched the wretch. There were 4 other giants at the place. 3 I killed, and the 4th got away, and has taken refuge beneath the throne of Mir Afruz, daughter of King Chimus. I took Gull back to my palace, and from that time till now I have treated her as a dog is treated, and I have cared for my dog as though it were my wife. Now you know what the rose did to the cypress, and now you must keep compact with me." "I shall keep my word," said the prince, "but may a little water be taken to the roof so that I may make my last ablution?" To this request the king consented. The prince mounted to the roof, and getting to a corner, struck his fire steel and burned one of the Simurge's feathers in the flame. Straightway the Simurge appeared, and by the majesty of its presence made the city quake. It took the prince on its back and soared away to the zenith. After a time, King Cinnabar said, "That young man is a long time on the roof. Go and bring him here." But there was no sign of the prince upon the roof. Only far away in the sky, the Simurge was seen carrying himself off. When the king heard of this escape, he thanked heaven that his hands were clean of this blood. Up and up the Simurge flew, till the earth looked like an egg resting on an ocean. At length it dropped straight down to its own place, where the kind prince was welcomed by the young birds and most hospitably entertained. He told the whole story of the rose and the cypress, and then, laden with gifts which the Simurge had gathered from cities far and near, he set his face for the castle of clashing swords. The king lion came out to meet him. He took the giant's chief's daughter, whose name was also Gull, in lawful marriage, and then marched with her and her possessions and her attendants to the place of gifts. Here they halted for a night, and at dawn said goodbye to the king lion and set out for Jamila's country. When the lady Jamila heard that Prince Almas was near, she went out with many fair handmaid to give him loving reception. Their meeting was joyful, and they went together to the garden palace. Jamila summoned all of her notables, and in their presence her marriage with the prince
was solemnized. A few days later, she entrusted her affairs to her wazir and made preparation to go with the prince to his own country. Before she started and restored all the men whom her sister Latifa had bewitched to their own forms and received their blessings and set them forward to their homes. The wicked Latifa herself she left quite alone in her garden house. When all was ready, they set out with all their servants and slaves, all her treasure and goods, and journeyed at ease to the city of King Chimus. When King Chimus heard of the approach of such a great company, he sent out his wazir to give the prince honorable meeting and to ask what he had procured him, the favor of the visit. The prince sent back word that he had not thought of war, but he wrote, "Learn and know, King Chimus, that I am here to end the crimes of your insolent daughter, who has tyrannously done to deaths to many kings and kings' sons, and has hung their heads on your citadel. I am here to give her the answer to her riddle." Later on, he entered the city, beat boldly on the drums, and was conducted to the presence. The king entreated him to have nothing to do with the riddle, for that no men had come out of it alive. "O king," replied Prince Almas, "it is to answer it I am here. I will not withdraw." The princess, Mir Afruz, was told that one man more had staked his head on her question, and that it was one who said he knew the answer. At the request of the prince, all the officers and notables of the land were summoned to hear his reply to the princess. All assembled, the king and his queen Gul, and the girl and the prince were there. The prince addressed Mir Afruz. "What is the question you ask?" "What did the rose do to the cypress?" replied the princess Mir Afruz. The prince smiled and turned and addressed the assembly. "You who are experienced men and versed in affairs, did you ever know or hear or see anything of this matter?" "No," they answered, "no one has ever known or heard or seen aught about it in this empty fancy." "From whom, then, did the princess hear of it?" "This empty fancy it is, has done many a servant of God to death." All saw the good sense of his words and showed their approval. Then he turned to the princess. "Tell us the truth, princess. Who told you of this thing?" "I know it hair by hair and in and out. But if I tell you what I know, who is there that can say I speak the truth? You must produce the person who can confirm my words." Her heart sank, for she feared that her long-kept secret was now to be noised abroad. But she said merely, "Explain yourself." "I shall explain myself fully when you bring here the giant whom you hide beneath your throne." Here the king shouted in wonderment, "Explain yourself, young man. What giant does my daughter hide beneath her throne?" "That," said the prince, "you will see if you order to be brought here. The giant will be found beneath the throne of the princess." Messengers were forthwith dispatched to the garden house, and after a while they returned, bringing a giant whom they had discovered in a secret chamber underneath the throne of Mir Afruz, dressed in a dress of honor and surrounded with luxury. The king was overwhelmed with astonishment, but the girl had taken heart again. She had time to think that perhaps the prince had heard of the presence of the giant and knew no more. So she said haughtily, "Prince, you have not answered my riddle." "O most amazing, impotent person," cried he, "do you not yet repent?" Then he turned to the people and told them the whole story of the rose and the cypress, the king Cinnabar and Queen Gul. When he came to the killing of the giants, He said to the one who stood before him, "You too were present." "That is so. All happened as you have told it." There was great rejoicing in the court, and all through the country over the solving of the riddle, and now because no more kings and princes would be killed. King Chimus made over his daughter to Prince Almas, but the latter refused to marry her and took her as captive. He then asked that the heads should be removed from the battlements and given a decent burial. This was done. He received from the king everything that belonged to the Princess Mir Afruz, her treasure of gold and silver, her costly stuffs and carpets, her household plenishing, her horses and camels, and her servants and her slaves. I'm thinking, pause for a second. I'm thinking that part of why Prince Almas is shaming her isn't just that she killed a bunch of people, but that she was keeping a black man under her throne. So I think they're insinuating that they were sleeping together, and that's why he was like shaming her extra, which I obviously don't condone, but I think that's like an extra unspoken layer of this story. Okay. Then Prince Almas returned to his camp and sent for Dil Aram, who came bringing her goods and chattels, her gold and her jewels. When all was ready, Prince Almas set out for home, taking with him Jamila and Dil Aram and Gul, daughter of Taramtak, and the wicked Mir Afruz and all the belongings of the four, packed on horses and camels and carts without number. If you don't remember, Dil Aram is the name of the servant of the princess who he promised he would marry. So he kept his promise to the Princess Jamila. He obviously didn't keep his promise to Princess Latifa because she was trifling. But he kept his promise to Dil Aram, and then he married Gul. So he's taken 3 wives. Pretty lit. As he approached the borders of his father's country, word of his coming went before him, and all the city came forth to give him welcome. King Saman Lalposh Jessamine, wearer of rubies, had so bewept the loss of his sons that he now was blind. When the prince had kissed his feet and received his blessings, he took from a casket a little collyrium of Solomon, which the Simurgh had given him, and which reveals the hidden things of earth, and rubbed it on his father's eyes. Light came, and the king saw his son. Mir Afruz was brought before the king, and the prince said, "This is the murderer of your sons. Do with her as you will." The king fancied that the prince might care for the girl's beauty, and replied, "You have humbled her. Do with her as you will." Upon this, the prince sent forth 4 swift, strong horses, and had the giant bound to each one of them, and each was driven to one of the 4 quarters, and he was torn into pieces like a piece of cloth. Brutal. This frightened Mir Afruz horribly, for she thought the same thing might be done to herself. She cried out to the prince, "O Prince Almas, what is hardest to get is most valued. Up till now, I have been subject to no man, and no man had my love. The many kings and kings' sons who have died at my hands, have died because it was their fate to die like that. In this matter, I have not sinned. That was their fate from eternity, and from the beginning it was predestined that my fate should be bound with yours." The prince gave ear to the argument from preordainment, and as she was a very lovely maiden, he took her to a lawful marriage. She and Jamila set up a house together, and Dilaram and Gul set up theirs, and the prince passed the rest of his life with the 4 wives in perfect happiness and in pleasant and sociable entertainment. Now has been told what the rose did to the cypress. All right, that was honestly pretty crazy. These stories are so good. I love stories from ancient Persia because they're so good. And they're so, like, they're almost like a telenovela or something, but they're also insane. It's sad to me how much colorism was involved in these stories. I substituted the word, they used a word to refer to black folks, which I don't think is appropriate, so I substituted it out for giant. But that's really what's so interesting yet sad reading these stories, is that it's evident that for over 1,000, 2,000 years that colorism has been a very, very, very big prejudice that has persisted on planet Earth. And I feel like this goes without saying, but it's pretty clear that who a human becomes is their personal choice, and that simple things like appearance have nothing to do with what a person chooses to be. But as I mentioned earlier, I think something that we don't take seriously enough with all humanity is how much burden we carry as individuals from the epigenetic memories that we carry, as well as memories from past lives, and specifically trauma. And the older I get, I really see how traumatized people are, and usually people don't realize the extent of their trauma. And usually when people are triggered, you can see their trauma arising, but it's often a blind spot for a lot of us. And I think this is the biggest reason why we still have war persisting on our planet, and people feel justified in war. As an adult, I think there's no justification for war. But of course, when you're triggered and you fear for your safety, it's easy to justify killing others, of course, you know. But it's silly that we would tell our children not to fight, and yet we allow adults to murder each other in cold blood and to murder children. I really think it is important to hear old stories from other cultures, because in many ways our society hasn't changed at all. We're still very interested in the supernatural, and of course we tell stories of them. Most people in the Western world aren't interested in studying, or they may not necessarily believe it's true, but they want stories about the supernatural. And there's still a lot of racism and colorism and religious prejudice and sexism and war and murder and hunting, and like all these things in these stories, which are stories from quite a long time ago, still depict a pretty similar picture of human society. And of course, these stories are, they are fantasy, but I do think they are revealing in the psyche and themes of humanity. And I would argue that in the last 6,000 years, humanity really hasn't changed that much, because colonization, classism, and racism are still ruling a lot of decision making, and we are still engaging in mass war. And I think it is our capacity as the human race, I think it is in our capabilities to end the cycle of extreme violence. It doesn't have to be this way. And I think it really starts with us all looking at ourselves, and asking ourselves some hard questions that, what would we do while we experience the worst amount of pain and trauma? How can we still show up with grace and compassion? I don't have an answer for that, but I'm trying my best. And I pray for all humanity that we can choose to live on this planet in paradise, because it's super lit. Also, meditation. If we could all meditate 20 minutes a day, I think we could heal the planet. But I'm ranting now. I hope that wherever you are safe, and that you are being good to yourself and your body. Planet Earth is a paradise, so I hope you're having a fantastic time. Please, if you like my podcast, please leave a review. If you want me to cover something, email in esotericaandnonsense@gmail.com. Do you have a story that maybe you heard growing up, or maybe a weird supernatural thing that happened to you? Write in. I also have t-shirts on my website that's available in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. Over and